The Chicago Bears' statement win over the Philadelphia Eagles sends a message to the rest of the NFL that not only is the Bears' success sustainable, but they can beat any team on any given Sunday or Friday.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making me Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And on the show today, we're going to break down this Bears win over the Philadelphia Eagles, taking a look at how the Bears were so successful on the ground with two 100-yard rushers in this game, and the role that Caleb Williams played in certainly managing that success. We'll look at this Bears defense, where they shut down pretty much everything the Eagles wanted to do, except for A.J. Brown. He kind of got his and had a big game, but that wasn't enough for the Eagles offensively. And then we'll check in on some of the other little things that helped in this game, some areas where the Bears made some progress, and even some areas where they can still play even better than what we saw against the Philadelphia Eagles. But the story of this game for me was about the Bears' ability to run the ball. Really, it was controlling the game in both trenches, but I think even the more impressive side was just how effective the dual threat of DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai were in this game. And I think this is one of those instances where when you try and separate, how well was it? Was it the running backs being great, or was it the offensive line just clearing huge holes, and you or I could have rushed for 100 yards in this game? And I think this is the rare instance where it's kind of both. And that's maybe even the most encouraging part of all this. That I thought the Bears' offensive line did a great job of pushing that line of scrimmage back and giving the running backs a nice 3, 4, or 5 yards of free running to lead up to before, the linebackers and safeties were coming over there to make plays. But if it were just the offensive line clearing up a free 3 or 4 yards, then you would see the running backs average 3 or 4 yards per carry. But Kyle Monangai was just under 6 yards per carry, and DeAndre Swift was just under 7 yards per carry. They both had runs of 20-plus yards in this game. And the offensive line is not blocking everybody all the way 20 and 30 yards downfield. Like, the running backs have to create that for themselves. Like, the offensive line does the first level stuff, the running backs do the second level stuff. And this was a game where we saw great run blocking at the first level from the offensive line, and then high quality running from these backs to create extra yards from there. That, yes, the offensive line definitely greased the wheels and got them some momentum there, but then the running backs did a great job either setting up blocks downfield or making guys miss or taking advantage of the spaces there and squeezing the extra yards beyond what the offensive line was able to do. Like, this to me was both run blocking and running back ability combining for a great game. Like, I think that's what it takes when you have over 250 rushing yards combined from your two running backs. Like, that can't just be great running backs. That can't just be great offensive line. To be that special in a game like this has to be both. And I thought it was both Monangai and Swift in their own ways. Swift using that speed to break free and create extra yards in there, and Monangai being physical and bouncing off of contact and running through arm tackles and falling forward constantly. Like, they both built a really strong rushing attack that then made everyone else's job that much easier. It didn't require elite quarterbacking from Caleb Williams, and it left, I would say, even a higher margin of error for Caleb Williams. I don't think he played a bad game, but it was much more of what felt to me like a game-managing type of performance from the quarterback, which is all you needed. But they weren't asking him to throw the ball downfield a bunch and generate a bunch of explosive plays with the offense. They didn't need him to. It wasn't on his shoulders, right? It wasn't like, oh, the Bears needed Caleb Williams to step up and do a bunch, and he failed to do so. It was like, no, they just needed him to kind of take care of the ball, give the Bears a threat in the passing game, create some plays with his legs here and there. And, he threw the ball downfield a few times, including a really nice touchdown to Cole Kmet. But, this was more of Caleb as a facilitator, because you don't need to when you're rushing for 250 yards with your running backs. You're getting 6 and 7 yards per carry in the ground game. You look at Caleb Williams' passing chart, the next gen stats, dots I always like to reference after games. You can look he only completed a couple of passes beyond 10 yards downfield. It was a lot of throwing short, throwing checkdowns, and throwing quick routes here that were definitely moving the chains, right? It wasn't necessarily like, hey, it's 3rd and long, and he's always just throwing short and praying that somebody makes a play after the catch. But then there was a lot of completions of 8 yards in the air, 7 yards in the air. There's plenty in that 5 to 10 yard range. It's not all behind the line of scrimmage, total check down Charlie, useless quarterback kind of stuff. But it was more like, hey, let's play it safe. Let's lean on this running game. Let's take care of the football, and then still take your shots downfield when you see them. And hits Cole Kmet on a great touchdown, and had a couple other impressive throws in this game. Also has the interception on the screen pass that I don't necessarily think is his fault per se. I mean, a defensive player is kind of the pass rusher hunt is kind of obscured by an offensive lineman, and then jumps out and reads the screen the whole way. It feels a little bit more like Ben Johnson being a little too predictable with those screen passes at that point in the game. They were calling a bunch of screens. Eagles started sniffing it out, and you get an interception in that pathway. But this was, I think, such a 4 quarters dominating the line of scrimmage type of performance from this Bears offense, and really the Bears defense as well, that was most encouraging, right? We've seen them have hot starts, strong finishes, and maybe they kind of lull a little bit in between. But the Bears, they didn't quite score points in every quarter, but they were driving at the end of the third quarter that bled over into the fourth quarter that they finished scoring points on. They were moving the ball well in every quarter. They were a little bit of a slow part, early in the third quarter for sure. It wasn't that every single drive was points and super successful, but consistently from start to finish, this Bears team was establishing its will at the line of scrimmage and getting what they wanted on offense. And we'll talk about the defense here in a second here, but such a well-rounded performance all along. Good pass protection. It felt like Caleb Williams had time to throw, most of the time. There were a couple times when pressure gets through and he has to scramble and escape. And of course, I think he got sacked a couple of times in this game, but generally, plus pass protection and plus run blocking from the offensive line. Maybe a little bit more to be desired from Rome Odunze on a couple of those plays. There were a couple of plays where receivers fell down on routes, but you get Cole Kmet involved, you get Luther Burden involved, Colston Loveland involved. Zacchaeus has a couple catches. Despite them only completing 17 passes, they got, I think 8 or 9 different receivers involved in the passing game. It just felt so well-rounded against the best opponent the Bears have faced all season. And we could start about excuses about how the Eagles' offense has been a little bit disjointed, but their defense has been playing really well. Vic Fangio coaches a good group there. They're pretty darn healthy on that side of the ball too, especially in that defensive line that's supposed to be a strength of the Eagles. And the Bears absolutely won that up front with Ozzie Trapillo holding up, playing pretty well at left tackle as well. So it just feels like, this was the kind of everything comes together performance from the Bears offense that we've been looking for. And then the defense more than did its part in a way that was even also a little bit unexpected given the injuries and everything they had to overcome on that side of the ball against a really solid quarterback in Jalen Hurts, maybe the best quarterback the Bears have seen since on this winning stretch, but also getting turnovers off of him too. So we'll take a look at what this Bears defense was able to do so well next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. They were selling out fast and selling out in a flurry. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, because it finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. I love that their prices include the fees up front, so there's no last second surprises at checkout, and you can see your view from the seat in the venue before you buy the tickets so you know exactly what you're getting. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets or any other game with every match, concert, or event with the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. This Bears offense set the tone with a dominant rushing performance, but I was impressed with how this Bears defense also held up in the trenches, right? This defensive line that is definitely the overall single largest weakness of this team. There's plenty of other weaknesses too, but like individually the most concerning group. Being able to keep Saquon Barkley at bay and get some pass rush on Jalen Hurts. It wasn't like, still wasn't as consistent as you would like, and certainly they went to the blitz a bit more against Hurts than we'd seen in some previous weeks, but making him uncomfortable at times and forcing him into some bad decisions. You know, his interception comes when he's pressured and forced out of the pocket and flows to the right and fires the ball downfield. It was an absolutely phenomenal play from Kevin Byard, but generated by pressure. I think Andrew Billings was actually the one on that play coming up the middle that pushed Hurts out and around the pocket. Like, I know this Eagles offensive line also has some injuries. Lane Johnson not playing is definitely a big one there, but this is still an Eagles team that's always been built on offensive and defensive line. They still have their starters at left tackle, left guard, center, right guard. Like that group was missing Lane Johnson. I don't want to downplay like, oh, it was just one starter, because of course he is their best and most important starter right now. However, it wasn't as though all of the Eagles' troubles on the offensive line were all happening from the right tackle position. I thought their right tackle, Fred Johnson, actually wasn't nearly as horrible as his reputation would suggest, and that they were kind of struggling a little bit universally across the board there. And I think the credit absolutely goes to Dennis Allen and this Bears defense, more so for the run defense than the pass rush. I think more of the Bears pass rush had to come from that blitz, and it's kind of been a little bit of a crutch for them. You look at so getting some pressures in this game. There's one that came from C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They had Jaquan Brisker coming off the edge. I think he got a pressure or two in there. Like they had to manufacture it in some ways, and you still need a little bit better from that. But to hold the Eagles to 15 points in this game is really a testament to how well they had this group playing and really shutting down everything the Eagles want to do on offense. We mentioned, except for A.J. Brown, who had 10 catches, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, yeah, he had a pretty good game. You're not going to completely shut down everything the 8-win first place Philadelphia Eagles want to do on offense, even as there's talk of their offensive coordinator not being the right guy for the job, and there's certainly some drama in the Eagles world. They're still an 8-win first place team, right? This is not a team that is anywhere close to the category of all the excuses we've heard, right? Of like, oh, well, the Bears are just beating a bad Giants team and a bad Bengals team and a bad Saints team and a bad Raiders team. Well, now they've beaten the first place Pittsburgh Steelers and the first place Philadelphia Eagles in back-to-back weeks. And those teams have flaws. So does everybody. Everybody has flaws right now. There is no unflawed team. The Rams just lost to the Panthers, given the Bears sole possession of the 1 seed in the NFC right now, and really like the third best record in all the football right now. So like this is very clearly like a legitimate win, and like across the board, the Bears were getting the job done. I was worried about how the Eagles would attack, these injured Bears linebackers, because you can point to all the trouble and the injuries the Eagles are dealing with. The Bears defense, you will get no sympathy from them with Edmonds, Edwards, and Noah Sewell all out again for the second straight week. And so you've got, Amon Ogbongbemiga and DeMarco Jackson lining up against, Dallas Goedert, and at one point, Devonta Smith was being covered by one of the linebackers up the sideline. I think it was Amon Ogbongbemiga. And, like, the Bears defense won that matchup. Like, they didn't win that specific play. Like, I think the linebacker kind of got blown by up the sideline there. But, like, Jalen Hurts was having trouble consistently competing downfield passes against injured backup linebackers. And, yes, you get Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon back, and that's absolutely a real boost for this Bears defense, but like you still didn't have Tyreek Stevenson, so Nashawn Wright is getting in those one-on-one matchups, and he gets beat for a touchdown down the sideline. There's definitely some Nashawn Wright giveth and Nashawn Wright taketh away boom and bust aspects of his game. We saw Jalen Johnson get beat one time vertically, but like other than that, like you look at Jalen Hurts' passing chart, he couldn't get nearly enough going that he wanted to. Like he completed some downfield passes there, some nice little chunks there, but you're not seeing him attack the seams and the middle of the field in the way that like we were worried about those linebackers being vulnerable. Like he got his vertical shots there more against safeties and cornerbacks, but you didn't see a lot of like Goddard working up the seam against DeMarco Jackson or Amon Agbabamiga. And like it felt like a lot of the targets that came towards these Bears linebackers tended to be underneath stuff where you had to come up and have them tackle. Like in terms of which defenders the Eagles were targeting in coverage, like the Bears' leading defenders in terms of pass targets, Kevin Byard, Kyler Gordon, Deshaun Wright, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson. Like these linebackers really weren't attacked all that much at all. And it's like, all right, Eagles, you want to go after the Bears' strengths and not go after the weaknesses? By all means. I mean, I think some of that can be coaching too in terms of what the Bears are running coverage-wise in terms of trying to minimize those matchups of, hey, let's not leave these linebackers one-on-one with these Eagles receivers whenever possible. But also like, hey, take what the offense gives you. And I think the Bears did a really good job of being able to set the tone in that regard. And then you talk about like just playmaking ability being infectious. Kevin Byard read it the whole way on that interception from Jalen Hurts. If you watch Amazon has their Prime Vision broadcast where you kind of get to watch it almost like the all 22 angle. When the break that Kevin Byard has in there, like as soon as Hurts floods the pocket, like Byard just takes off on a beeline because he knows exactly where that ball's going to be and he steps in front of it and picks it off. Or Deshaun Wright to come up and make that strip on the tush push. That was something that one of the Eagles' opponents did earlier this season. I want to say it was a Cowboys defensive lineman, but I can't remember which team did that to the Eagles. And then the Bears are the only other team that's tried that. And Deshaun Wright just runs right in, rips the ball out from Jalen Hurts, turnover for the Bears. Like they're generating turnovers in ways that are great individual playmaking and not just, oh, you got lucky because the pass got tipped up and fell into your hands or whatever, or the quarterback misread the play and threw it right to you. Like no. These were playmaking turnovers by the Bears. These are like sustainable stuff here that is working against better and better teams every single week. And it's the Bears offense and it's the Bears defense, even though the defense still has its flaws and I think still is the weaker side of the ball and still has its concerns, right? They're still, 24th in points allowed this season. But I think that's a group that as it continues to get healthier, continues to make strides. You're seeing them play better and better football in recent weeks, and the turnovers keep coming. And I think the healthier they can get, like once these linebackers start coming back, Tyree Stevenson's going to be back at some point. The Bears are going to have too many good cornerbacks to figure out how to play them all. Isn't that a crazy concept from just a few weeks ago when they were scraping the bottom of the barrel there? And you wonder about the linebackers, like how they're going to keep that rotation going. Because I thought DeMarco Jackson and Amon Agbabamiga generally playing well, good enough, getting the job done. Especially, I think DeMarco Jackson kind of stepping up in the running game and making some nice plays there. Like, there's a real question about, like, is Sewell still going to be linebacker number 3, given the struggles he's had in pass coverage and the missed tackles he's had there. Like, there's just so much to like, I think, from this performance that leaves you have to feel really optimistic moving forward. Not necessarily that the Bears are going to win out and, have the 1 seed and a first-round bye and a home field advantage throughout the playoffs necessarily. They're still going to lose more games this season, in all likelihood. But boy, they're playing really well, and it is absolutely for real, especially because it feels like they're doing a lot of the little things better and keep getting a little bit better at some of those little things that aren't the big storylines, don't stand out on the box score as like, oh yeah, here's a big key to victory. But boy, they really start to add up over the course of a game that separates the good teams from the great teams. So we'll take a look at some of those smaller things that individually might not be a huge deal, but collectively really can swing a game in either direction. The Bears are doing really well right now. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening all at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy sports. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and super easy to play. So you could pick more or less on Caleb Williams' passing yards, DeAndre Swift's rushing touchdowns, or any other sport. You can combine a Bulls pick with a Bears pick. However you want to do it, it's a lot of fun. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, and everything keeps flowing. So download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. So the Bears did the important things on offense and defense to hold the Eagles' offense down, to control the clock and the line of scrimmage and the running game on offense. But I think like the cherry on top there is the little things they did right, and also then the potential for them to keep playing even better. Like this is not the best version of the Chicago Bears yet, and they just beat the NFC East leading Philadelphia Eagles, defending Super Bowl champions, and the Bears can still play even better than what they did in Philadelphia. I think the first thing that jumps out at me is like little thing that made a big difference in this game. Bears cut their penalties down to 4 penalties for 35 yards. I believe as I go back through my notes from the game, there was a holding on Darnold Wright. It was the Bears' first penalty and it came with under 30 seconds left in the first half. Then you had a false start on Carl Jones on a punt play. You had a roughing the passer penalty that was pretty bad on Gervon Dexter. And then a false start on Joe Thuney. Both of those, I think, in the third quarter. I think actually 3 of those were all in the third quarter, 1 in the second quarter. But like you weren't seeing those consistent Bears shooting themselves in the foot with a penalty that then puts their offense in second and third and long, or gives free plays to the opposing offense to get them closer to points. Like, yeah, the Gervon Dexter one was that for sure. And obviously like the Thuney false start's one of those like doy kind of like, what are you doing kind of moments. But like they absolutely did not cost the Bears in this game. Like, yes, the Dexter one leads to a touchdown, but like more so it didn't cost them like the difference between winning and losing, because like you rarely, if ever, are you going to have a game with 0 penalties, right? So you're always going to have a couple to account for. And I think 4 for 35 is a number you can live with. Ideally, it's not a roughing the passer that sets them up for the touchdown eventually, but like that was as clean of a penalty performance as you could hope for at this stage of the process, and that's a big factor here. I also think Ben Johnson's like gamesmanship and like head coach, clock management and just kind of like managing of the game has gotten, I don't want to say gotten so much better, because it was never like horrible or bad, but like has become a bigger and bigger factor when you think about him taking the opening kickoff and taking the wind, right? So that they would have the win in the first and fourth quarter, and the Eagles would have it in the second and third quarter, and that being a really big factor in a weather game like this, and knowing that in Chicago, weather is going to be a factor in some of these games. Controlling the clock by handing the ball off to your 2 running backs 40 times in this game. And then Williams had 5 runs of his own, and Moore and Burden each had a run. That's 47 runs in this game. The time possession was almost 40 minutes to 20 minutes. The Bears controlling the ball and controlling the clock. If I'm going to nitpick Ben Johnson, it felt like they abandoned the run a little bit in the second quarter and even some in the third quarter, even when you had a lead in some of those stretches. But nonetheless, like I'm not going to panic about that or be too worried about it, but that's an area like you could even be even better in this game. Like, I got a little pass happy at times, but that's really not a big deal. I also think it's easy to overlook how important the Eagles' missed kicks were. That's not even necessarily something the Bears did, but like we talk about how well the Bears played, like missing a extra point early in the game that keeps you like an extra little ones. It keeps you ahead by 1 point, even when the Eagles do score their touchdown. And then by the end of the game, it becomes a difference between a 7 and an 8 point game, forces the Eagles to have to go for 2, and then they don't get it. So then they're down 9, right? Like that 1 point was a big difference. And then missing a field goal late in the game, also a big difference in this game. Like special teams in general was much more of a positive factor for Chicago against the Eagles than we've seen it in other games this season, where sometimes special teams gets in the way. I thought the Bears' kickoff and punt coverage units were better in this game. The Eagles' longest kickoff return, I think, was like 24 yards. So they weren't getting amazing field position off their kickoff return team. They had 1 punt return for like 9 yards. Like too often we see a lot of those hidden yards against the Bears, where it's not always the big touchdown, but they get an extra 10 or 15 yards of field position on a punt or a kickoff return that, sure, individually doesn't lose you the game, but it makes it that much easier on your opponent in what have already been kind of tight, closely contested games, especially now against teams like the Eagles and Steelers that are first-place teams where the margin of error gets that much smaller. And we can throw in Josh Blackwell having a nice 34-yard return in there that gave the Bears some good field position later in that game to extend the lead and not let the Eagles fully climb back into this game. And then just bigger picture, controlling the momentum and the energy of the game and being able to pull out big plays to keep the Eagles crowd turned on the Eagles. The Philadelphia crowd seemed to be booing at every moment, and the Bears did a great job of like keeping that heat and keeping that pressure on. And there's no real way to measure that impact, and it's probably less of an impact than we like to ascribe it, not being on those sidelines. But it's got to be tough to be a Philadelphia Eagles player and be frustrated, and your own fans are booing you when you're an 8-win team in first place in your division. And like they were booing when it was a 10-9 game, right? Or even when it's 7-3, like when the Eagles are right in it, they're booing. They're unhappy. And it's just like the Bears did a great job of like not letting the Eagles get the fan base and the energy of the stadium back on their side. Like I think there were those moments last year and in the Eberflus regime where it's like, even when the Bears are winning, you feel it slipping away, and like you feel the energy in the stadium and the room kind of flowing to the other team, whether it's a home crowd or whatever, that like you can kind of feel that all coming out of the stadium and like going the other direction. And again, maybe this is all, pseudo science, not real factors and stuff, but like, especially an ornery fan base like Philadelphia, just felt like keeping that heat and keeping that pressure on by not letting them climb back in the game, not letting them get close enough to truly actually believe, stopping them on that 2-point conversion to keep it a 9-point game instead of it being all of a sudden a 1-possession game. And, the fan base is back into it. They're believing again. The guys believe in themselves. And instead, like, you're piling up and dialing up that frustration on the Philadelphia sideline and letting them kind of beat themselves up a little bit in addition to the butt whooping that you're giving them on the field. So I just thought that all played really nicely into the Bears' hands and into the Bears' favor there to overcome the interception and to respond by, making a nice defensive stand and not letting that become that big of a momentum switch for this Bears team that you could feel a potential little screen pass become that catalyst of because the Bears it was 10-9 at that point, and it could have been the catalyst for an Eagles comeback, but then defense makes some stops, get him in the tush push situation. Deshaun Wright rips it out, gets the fumble, and undoes whatever momentum the interception was going to give the Eagles. Like that response was always there, and that's a resilience, like a team-wide resilience that I think means something for the Chicago Bears. And you're hoping translates to Lambeau Field on Sunday for what might be the biggest Bears-Packers game since 2013. I mean, a lot's at stake on Sunday, and we'll have plenty to break down in the Bears-Packers matchup all week long here on Locked On Bears. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, be sure to check out the Locked On NFL podcast. Because with the Bears playing on Friday, maybe you weren't tuned into all the Sunday games the way you might normally be, but Locked On NFL will break down all the top storylines you need to know from Sunday, because the podcast comes out twice a day. Once in the morning with Tyler Rowland, and then again in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, so they're not missing any of the biggest football stories. So go make Locked On NFL your second listen today on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Coming back tomorrow and make Locked On Bears your first listen once again, so you can get another opportunity to bear down.